and I hope that the Luncheon panel will provide an informal framework, a conversation really, in which we could share our experiences as public servants and perhaps inspire those of you, particularly the young people in the audience who seek to enter the public arena. I would note that there are note cards on the table. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to introduce the panel, then ask them a couple of questions, and then if you have questions, please write them down on the note cards. They'll be passed up to me, and then I'll pose your questions to our panel. But let me begin by introducing our panelists. Karen Narasaki is President and Executive Director of the Asian American Justice Center, one of the nation's leading voices advocating for the rights and interests of Asian Americans. As a widely renowned leader in the Asian American community, she serves in a number of leadership positions in the civil rights and immigrant rights communities. Karen is Vice Chair of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, the nation's oldest and broadest civil rights coalition. She chairs the Rights Working Group, serves on the board of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, is the past board member of the independent sector. Karen also serves on the National Commission on Adult Literacy and is a member of the Asian Pacific American Advisory Council. I know that she always gave me advice when I was the Chief of Staff in the White House, and it was some advice I very much appreciated. We worked through some hard battles together. Chris Liu is the White House Cabinet Secretary for President Barack Obama. Previously, he was the Legislative Director and Acting Chief of Staff in the Obama Senate office. He left his post in the office to serve as Executive Director of the Obama-Biden Transition Project. In that capacity, I am a witness that he kept me out of trouble, and I thank him for that. In 2005, Chris served as Deputy Chief Counsel to Representative Henry Waxman on the staff of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Before taking his first job on Capitol Hill, Chris spent 5 years in the Washington office of the law firm of Sidley and Austin. Julie Chon serves as the International Economic Advisor to the Senate Banking Committee Chairman, Senator Chris Dodd. In addition to developing legislation to address the financial crisis, the Housing and Economic Recovery Act and the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, Julie's work focuses on international financial markets, regulatory reform, the IMF, exchange rates, and sovereign investments, all hot topics in Washington these days. Prior to joining the committee, she advised the Senate Democratic leadership on economic and banking policy and developed communication strategies for the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee. From 1998 to 2004, Julie structured international debt transactions for sovereign and other issuers at Salomon Brothers Citi in London and J.P. Morgan Chase in New York. She's been in the belly of the beast, as it were. Maybe we can get her to share some of those experiences as well. But I'm going to start with the dean of the group, Karen Narasaki. I think that many people, when they think of public service, Karen, think only of government service, and particularly now during the new administration. But your experience has been in public service across a very wide spectrum and in important NGOs and in advocacy work here. I'd like you to reflect a little bit about your journey into the service that you're rendering and give the audience a bit of a sense of what it means to serve in a capacity on the non-governmental side.
Right. Thanks, John. My path was really through the law. And one of the things that I always was mindful of is my parents were very active in the community. My father was a leader in the Nisei Vets, and I learned about the internment of them and their families during World War II. And as you might imagine, that very much affected my worldview. And one of the lessons that my father taught me was that you don't have a right to complain unless you're willing to go out and make change. And I've always really taken that to heart, that if there's something out there that isn't working in the community, then it's really not enough to sit around and just note that it's a problem, but you have to be willing to step up and do something about it. I was very fortunate. I went to a blue-collar high school, and this was 30 years ago, so I was given an opportunity to go to Yale College. And that, at the time, I got in through affirmative action. My school wasn't known for sending very many people to college at all, much less to the Ivy League schools. And that gave me a great opportunity. And so part of also what was instilled in us at Yale was that they were trying to create leaders, and that we were given a great gift of such wonderful education that it was a responsibility actually to give back. From there, I worked for a couple of years in a corporate consulting firm here in Washington. I actually didn't do anything in the government, but I got to see how it worked. Then I went to UCLA Law School, clerked for Judge Harry Pragerson on the Ninth Circuit. Again, that was a great opportunity. He was looking to have a woman. He had already hired 2 of his clerks, and they were both men, and he wanted to have a women's perspective on his team. I didn't know anybody who was a lawyer, and so I didn't even know what a clerk was, or clerkship. I wouldn't have known to go after it. And so it was very fortunate that the dean of UCLA reached out and gave me the opportunity to apply. And it was wonderful getting to see how courts really work. From there, I went to Seattle, back home to where I was from, and worked for 6 years at the firm of Perkins Coie, and I was a corporate securities attorney. I did a lot of public offerings. I worked with high-tech companies. I loved my job. I liked the firm. But I found after my first year that there was something missing in my life. And what was missing in my life was a connection back to community. So I got active in things like the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association, was on their board, chaired their Civil Rights Committee, and from there I met people who recruited me to work at the Japanese American Citizens League to run their DC office. That was almost 20 years ago. And at the time, there were only 2 national Asian groups in DC, OCA and the Japanese American Citizens League, and I was the only full-time lobbyist for the entire community. When I went, I said, the people who were recruiting me, I said, I don't know what a lobbyist is. I don't know how you do that. And they said, don't worry, you'll learn. And so sometimes along the way, you have to take a leap of faith and take a chance, and that's what I did. 3 years later, I was given the opportunity to run the Asian American Justice Center, which is a group that Stuart Quo, who is well known to the Committee of 100, founded because he felt that there really needed to be a stronger voice in DC on these issues, particularly from a legal perspective. OCA and JCL membership groups, that's very important. It's very important to have the grassroots voice, but you need to have legal technical expertise. And I was given the opportunity to run the organization then. It was hard to leave the law firm because I had to take a 50% cut in pay and move across back to Washington away from my family. But I can tell you, it was really well worth it. At the time, there was a lot going on. There were a lot of hate crimes that happened against Asian Americans. There was a bill that passed that left out Asian Americans from its coverage, and it was because Asian Americans did not have a strong enough voice. And it's been really exciting to see the growth and change. When I was at Yale, I was told my aspiration was to work for the State Department, and I was told not to bother because I was a woman and a minority, and I would never really get an opportunity to have an important leadership job. Now we have a government that has 3 Asians in the cabinet and a minority woman leading the State Department. So that just goes to show you if a lot of people get in there and are willing to make change, how much change can really happen for all Americans.
Thank you. Let me turn to you, Chris. You probably got the job everybody in the audience would like to have, working in the White House, working 20 hours a day, never seeing your family, but at the center of the excitement, and this week being certainly no exception. But your path came, I made a joke about my predecessor, Mac McLarty, going to kindergarten. You were smart enough to go to law school with the future president of the United States. But then you left law school and you entered law practice. What took you away from the traditional practice of law back into public service, and what advice do you have for people who would like your job?
That's a great question, and I can say that before taking this job, working for John was probably one of the greatest experiences I've had. So it's an honor to be here with him. We worked together for about 6 months on the transition, and for probably those first month or so, it was just basically John and I sitting around his office, doing sketches of what the administration would look like. So it's a pretty gratifying thing to see the whole thing come together. And, I will just say that it's an honor to be here with John. He is a mentor, and through his remarkable career, he's an inspiration to me. It's also one of the few panels I've actually